Back in time with BassMaster magazines. We're at September, October 1977. And I'm just going to mention this because it's in all of them. It was one of the favorite things in the BassMasters, the Harry and Charlie part, because it kind of made fun of us in a good way. And these were two really actual people that did this. And the picture kind of looks a little bit like them. But I didn't get into it back then because to me this was not, I wasn't into it for the entertainment. But a lot of people are. They only be entertained. And you should, and it allows you to actually look at yourself, a little bit with, maybe the proper perspective, putting things in priority-wise in the right place. Again, it's a little bit, and this is my first boat I designed for Glastron myself. And there's kind of right now as we speak, Elite Series is having a tournament on Albemarle Sound. And the first time ever, actually I was running a different Glastron boat then, but I went to Albemarle Sound and I took in my small boat, which was a mistake. So I went with my partners once I saw how big that water was, because my small Glastron really was not made for the Albemarle Sound. And that first tournament day going out, all of a sudden I noticed, I was riding with my partner, water just started shooting up out of the bottom of the boat through the hose in the boat. And he slowed down, and later we found out, when you were running, the hull had been split, okay? And when you would run, it would open up and water would shoot inside the hull. When you stopped, it was still leaking, but it wasn't shooting into the boat. We had to get somebody to come pick us up because we weren't about to try to go back through the Sound to past Cohoney River, where we launched at Elizabeth City, North Carolina. But there was a guy there, and he knew that I designed a boat, and he had one. He said, "You can borrow my boat. You can use it." And so I used this Glastron. And Forrest Wood even said, when that Glastron designed that boat, I knew that they could be a problem in the bass fishing market. Glastron went out of business about a year and a half later, so that problem went away because their main emphasis was on family runabouts. They were the largest boat manufacturer in the world. The oil embargo killed that market completely, and literally they went out of business in like 2 years. So, but the other part of this is here again, how we, again, demonize things that we really don't understand. And this is, earlier I spoke back in time on hydrilla. Well, this is water hyacinths, a war against the purple pest. And it's water, and they can be a problem. I'm not going to say they can't be, but they also had a real positive side to them. And the only people who saw that were the fishermen. Everybody else kind of did not.
I see that there's a picture on the next page.
And so here they are, and the way they were dealing with them was actually worse than this purple pest by itself, and that was they spraying them with chemicals. And the same thing they did on Conroe. They poured 55 gallons of drum of very toxic chemicals into the water to kill them. So I'm still think the way we handle, what we call invasive species is very hypocritical. And here's Ray I saw a lot. He did a lot in these early deals on smallmouth, creek fishing, because he was looking for content, okay? And anyway, there wasn't a lot of content and also he did a lot, as you saw, on fly fishing. We even had a fly fishing tournament in one of the early issues on Bull Shoals Lake. But it brings back good memories for me. And these are a lot of the fly fishing and popping bugs. And the popping bugs was my favorite. And it brings back the memories of getting up in the morning before I went to school, before daylight, and riding my bike back to a rice reservoir behind the house in LaPorte, Texas. I lived in Fairmount Park, and there were still rice reservoirs behind the house out there. and I'd ride back with my bike and my fly rod, and I'd get in the rice reservoirs and I'd fly fish in the morning, wading up to my stomach before my mom honked and I had to come out and go to school. And I'd hide my bike in the weeds and put my fly rod, break it down, put it in the back of her car, and she'd have me clothes to dress in the principal's office before I'd go into classes. But I always remember one morning when I waded back. It's again, I'm 78 years old, and this is a very clear memory. I was wading, and I was throwing that popping bug on my fly rod, and I'll never forget this bass just, it's almost like it went into slow motion. And I never did the fly rod right. You're supposed to pull it through your gills like this and hold it. I would go in my mouth. I'd hold the line in my mouth and find it. And it was about a 3-pounder, big, really big for me at that time. And the thing was running around me. It ran between my legs. I could feel it jump out. But the line was going between my legs. It jumps behind me. And I'll never forget it as long as I live. And
memory.
Yeah, it was on my, a fly rod, a popping bug. I'm going to briefly go into this because it's getting old, even though it went on forever. The anti-tournament stuff was just going everywhere. There was groups that wanted to totally outlaw it, and there was, of course, and they were picking all kinds of reasons. And the one, I remember I went through and I read all the reasons they didn't like it, because it was going to kill the fishery, blah, 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 which never proved to be true. There were some anglers that were inconsiderate to the recreational anglers, which that was a small percentage. Sure, it went on, but it was a real small percentage of the tournament anglers that would do that. Like most things in life, it only takes one or two to screw the whole game up. But the one that I'm gonna try to find it here that I did find humorous is that the anti-forces claim too much fishing pressure is being leveled at the black bass, and that speeding bass boats are like cattle drivers coming in town after they drove their cows through town. I thought that was kind of close. That in the beginning, before we really started, getting and that's where not all of this was bad. Constructive criticism constantly made us analyze ourselves and how can we do it better. So constructive, but there was some other criticism that was just ridiculous. It's mostly just professional jealousy, and everybody thinks their water near home is private water to them. Oh, this again, we're still having tournaments going on, trying to qualify who's going to make the Fall Classic. And Billy Westmoreland, this is the gentleman that drugged Johnny Morris out of Beaver Lake when he was holding on to a gas tank in super cold water. And he won this tournament. It was Greer's Ferry in Arkansas, a beautiful, beautiful lake. They're out of Clinton, Arkansas. But, and again, I always like to see if I was getting better. To see, Billy had 18 fish, and I'm down here, and I had only 12 in this tournament. I did make $362. Yeah, wow. So,
I actually saw a story that Kim did about that event. They said a tornado came over the lake.
I don't remember that. I don't doubt it. It wouldn't be the first one. All right, and here's the next tournament. And I'm going to just go through the tournaments because I'm doing it for my purpose. And anyway, Roland won it. It was in West Point Lake. And again, I just won the two biggest tournaments of my life, the year before and this year. I'm in third in this one, probably the best finish I've had in a regular season tournament. And Harold Allen just constantly used to ride me. You can't win a regular season tournament. You can only win these special events, the classic or the. So at that time I couldn't argue against him because I had never won one, but I was getting better, and I had 24 fish. So I was catching more fish than 90% of the field, even though I wasn't necessarily winning. I always used that as a positive. A young guy, hey, I'm getting better. Add that to your positive reasons to succeed and continue, your dreams. This is also just an overall ranking, and still, see, Bill and Dance and Roland Martin are still all. This is the points leading. Angler of the Year, as you want to refer to it. And Bill was leading, and Roland Martin was second, and I had moved all the way up to seventh. I'd never been that high in the Angler of the Year stuff. So, to me, I'm looking for things to add to this positive energy, and because I was starting to realize, like I explained, how important it was. And without it, you just, I don't know. I'm not going to say their names, but there are 4 or 5 anglers out there that are incredible anglers right now and in the past are so negative. I can't believe they're as good as they are. And I even told 1 or 2 of them, I said, if you would quit being so negative, there's no telling how good you would be. You're a good angler, but you could be so much better. And for that one reason, half their time spent thinking negative thoughts. I just kind of interesting, the rod still, if you noticed in all these magazines, I know you haven't because I hadn't pointed it out. Lou Childress was one of the best rod designers there ever was, and he called himself a cane pole guy. He was the king of cane poles. But he also, look at these handles, how short they are. And he wanted the handle of the rod to be, and the reel to be part of your arm. And these were mostly 6.5 foot rods, and you casted them with one arm. And of course, over time, we know if you fish as much as tournament anglers do, that's going to come back to haunt you in your elbows, in your shoulders, in your wrists. And but you don't. So far, this is 1977. You don't see a long handle rod, and that's the dominant rod nowadays. And I think we will get to that. The first one I ever knew that used long handle rods was D. Thomas flipping those. It was a flipping technique, and those were all custom rods they had made. That you couldn't buy one. They were custom rods. But then all of a sudden, and I'm going to get to it in one of the later magazines, I'm sure. I started, well, why don't we fish those? And there's a story behind it, but I'm not going to waste it now. I'll tell it to you in the future. But and again, the one thing you notice about all these rods, which has a future story, and it actually somewhere close to the end of 1977, beginning of 1988, how you had to disengage the reel back then. You'll notice there's a little, and this is Abu Garcia. There's this little metal deal, and like here, they did it. It's right there and right here that you had to push in. To do it, you had to reach over with your other hand or change hands with the rod and reel.
That or that?
This little deal, or that little clip.
Yeah,
you pushed it in to disengage the reel.
Okay.
And this is the Lou Childress, and he's making the reel smaller. But I didn't like that completely because it means less line capacity, and I believed in long cast with crankbaits. So I still, even nowadays, I use a Johnny Morris reel that has a large line capacity. They make both of them, but I don't like, I understood this, they want a lighter reel, all that, but your line capacity, and I tended to use heavier line, which meant bigger diameter. It wouldn't hold as much line as a guy that used 10-pound test either. So to go to a smaller reel, I couldn't get that very much line that was 17, 20 on a reel, unless I stayed with the bigger reels. Okay, this is the final one. I'm just going to ask them with a trivia question here.
Okay.
What was the first Alabama rig? Okay, this is 1977, okay? And I didn't ever think about this myself until Guy Aker one time, they asked him on the stage, and this was just maybe 5, 8, 9, 10 years ago. They said, "Guy, what'd you catch him on?" He said, "I caught him on the original Alabama rig." And that's what he called the original Alabama rig. And at first you go, huh? But then you start thinking about it. Alabama rig, you know, has, and I used to use spinnerbaits that had 5 blades on it, and stuff. So the difference, of course, is only one of these fish attractors has a hook. With the Alabama, and then states started even on Alabama, like limiting how many of those attractors could have a hook. So I just, again, a little interesting look back in time. We just now finished September, October 1977. And I assume that I'm fishing a classic about somewhere in this time frame already, even though it won't come out until the next issue. It's probably in 1978.